This video is about my visit to an insane asylum in Sweden. The place was built in 1912 for the incarceration and treatment of people that had committed severe violent crimes and had serious mental health problems. They were very hard to control. It was the home of well-known Swedish murderers, and very few of the patients made it out of there alive. One of the patients was the infamous Sigvard Nilsson Turneman, who was the leader of a gang that committed robberies and murders. He was said to be very sinister and almost had an hypnotic way to make his members into murder machines. Many of the patients ended up in the cemetery specially made for people that died in there and nobody wanted to have any connections with. The cemetery is located just a few hundred meters away from the asylum. During the time and age the asylum was active, the doctors used various methods to treat the patients, which is nowadays considered very unethical, evil, and wrong. So the history that this place holds is nothing but dark. And in 1989 it closed down for good. Nowadays, there are stories of people saying they felt a presence in there, had seen shadows and heard anxious screams and voices. I'm going to bring you along my photography journey inside and along the way show you how I shoot my photos as well as talk about this place and what it was used for. So, I arrived around 3 p.m. I wanted to spend time here both at day and in pitch black darkness. The reason I wanted to be here when it's bright is because it's easier to take photos since there is more light. But I wanted to stay until the dark so I could capture the eerie feeling that this place holds. And in January in Sweden it gets dark at around 4 p.m. First off, I had a look at the place outside. In 2002 there was a fire on the roof, so it's partially burned down. The building consists of thick walls, and in the back there are tall walls to surround and keep the patients from escaping through the backyard. In two places there are some sort of outposts with thick bars so the guards could have a lookout. I would say the walls are about 5 meters high and made out of solid bricks or concrete. The backyard is filled with wild trees growing taller than the wall, which really shows how old this place is. I was greeted by this text, which means "come here and die." In the back there was a ladder for people to climb over, which I've heard about and seen. At this point I realized my lens on my main camera had a too narrow perspective, so I went and changed it into a wide-angle lens. My recommendation is to bring a wide-angle lens in buildings since it is usually a too cramped up space for the zoom lenses or even normal lenses. Now it is time to go inside. In the front there was a window with some bent metal bars that I climbed through. Basically every window I saw was sealed with these bars that kept the patients from escaping. My first thought was that this place is so photogenic that I could barely contain myself. The first rooms must have been some sort of living room. There were glass and trash everywhere on the floor, but I could distinguish the remains of the wallpaper this place used to have. The rooms were pretty big, and the wallpaper seemed to fit the living room since I guess you don't have wallpaper in rooms where you keep the patients for treatment or where they are alone. The corridor was really long and filled with thick open doors that belongs to the cells. At this point I prepared for my first photo. So I put my camera on a tripod and chose a low angle to show the majestic window that shed light upon the doors and the floor. The lower angle also helped me to capture as many parts of the interior as possible. Then I placed the camera a little bit to the left to add depth. After that, I made a decision which I actually regret in hindsight. I'll tell you about it later in this video why this was a bad decision. The most common sight was the cells that were very cramped up and solid. Luckily, the GoPro is very wide-angled, so it allowed me to capture pretty much the whole room from one position. In here, the patients must have spent most of their time, and probably more than one criminal and or murderer lived here and stared into these walls day in and day out. Who knows what happened here? And I don't know if I really wanna know. In the end of the corridor, there was a toilet that was smashed into pieces, of course, because of vandals. A common sight in most abandoned places is that pretty much anything made out of glass or porcelain is shattered. So be aware, put on some resistant shoes and watch your steps. I found some electric facilities that were in surprisingly good condition. I would have imagined every single cord would have been torn out by the looks of everything else, but I guess not. I spotted a real bulky and solid lock, and above it a hole that gave me a view of a room behind it. As I walked towards it, I just had to get a glimpse of the backyard to get a hint of what I'm going to explore later. The room behind the hole must have been some sort of kitchen or dining hall. Then I entered a room which looked like some sort of shower room. I've seen it in pictures that they used to have a bathtub for the patients. The way the patients had a bath was kind of odd, because when they laid in the tub, they had a sheet over them, so only their head was exposed. I guess it was for safety reasons, so hopefully I will find it. I went ahead and looked at every room on the first floor, but they looked pretty much the same. By now, my friend Dovska wanted to get out of there since it was getting more cold and dark. He told me a nail had went right through his shoe in an earlier visit here. The place is unsafe and filled with dust that you constantly breathe in, so I understand his choice of leaving the place. I gave him my car keys and went on to explore the place myself. The stairs between the floors had an interesting composition to me. Stairs are usually pretty photogenic since they have perspective that starts wide and ends narrow. If you stand by the bottom of the stairs, the bottom will be wide and the top narrow. And the good part is that the stairs leads to a window in this case that casts a light. So all the lines are leading towards the window, which is the main motive of this photo. Honestly, I could have spent more time to get a better composition, but this photo, that is taken later after I explore the place, is a bit rushed since I didn't have much time and battery left. And that is bad planning on my behalf. Now it's time to go through the door and into the basement. I also had a look at the entrance gate, and it's sealed from the inside as well as the outside. The whole building is big, and so far the first floor felt pretty open and free compared to the basement, which was more cramped and walls was even thicker. So this must have been the place where they controlled the ventilation and heating for the whole building. I could see pipes everywhere and the remains of some sort of heating system. Not to a surprise, I saw another cryptic message on the wall. Well, keep your 8th grade philosophy for yourself, kids, and especially don't vandalize a place like this. One room had a really small entrance that I had to explore, but I saved it for later. I did a quick check with my UV light, but I've already drained a lot of battery, so I couldn't do a thorough scan at the time and have to save the battery for getting out of there. By now it was getting darker and I've seen most of the basement, so the only room left is the one with the small entrance. My body wasn't on my side, but I could squeeze myself through, accompanied with some obligatory old man grunting. The room had me puzzled. I don't know what it could have been used for. My initial thought was either a storage room or a place to have a tank of water or whatever. Anyways, by now it was time to turn off the lights and be quiet to get a feeling of the place. The basement was really quiet, obviously. The only noise present were the wind drafts. But every now and then you can hear noises when you're upstairs or outside. At some points in this video I heard noises and stopped to listen. But you know, the place is crumbling and who knows how many animals live there. If you like the video so far, then please consider to subscribe so you can support me to do more of these kind of videos. Now it was time to go upstairs to the top floor. By the way, I got a photo of the cells when it was dark. Since it was hard to get any light and especially smooth light, I pointed my flashlight upwards, so it bounces onto the ceiling and then spreads out over the room. I used this technique throughout a big portion of this video, by the way, so it's good for videography too. The top floor was pretty similar to the first one. If you remember, I talked about a bathtub I've seen in pictures where they let patients bathe, probably to relieve stress and anxiety. Well, I found the tub in this room. Now, this is a normal bathtub, but the history it holds is not very normal. Imagine how many murderers and criminals have been in this tub. There are also basically no remains of treatment equipment here. No syringes, meds, or whatever you use to treat the patients. So this bathtub is the only treatment equipment that remains. I was walking in the corridor when I heard a noise. It was relatively loud. The sound recording on the GoPro isn't that good, but you can hear something if you listen closely. I'll play it again a little bit louder so you can hear what I mean. It was like a smashing sound, like something fell down or maybe someone stepping on rubble. If it was my friend, I would have heard it, and it isn't like him to sneak up on me. And he kinda had an alibi since he was down by the lake taking photos. If someone snuck in while I was there, they would have been very quiet, since it's nearly impossible to get in there without making a sound. But maybe it was the wind or something that decided to fall down right at that moment. Might as well could have been an animal too, so I shrugged it off and continued to the attic. The attic is the thing that's been mostly damaged in the fire. Rubble was blocking my path, so I had to crouch under and crawl my way through. My first view was this Blair Witch looking thing, but it might as well could have been the remains of a swing or a rope ladder. Can't say I saw anything that was especially interesting, except for some trees growing on the floor. It is amazing that the trees can survive in that environment, but nature seems to have its ways. On my way through the rubble, I saw this plank full of nails. No wonder my friend stepped on one before. Now it was time for the most interesting part of the whole location, in my opinion. The backyard. The barricade of the big walls, the metal bars on every window and security outposts is what makes this building distinguished and feels like a prison. So I made my way out of there into the backyard. The first sight was this thick forest. I can't imagine there were many trees, if any, when this place was running. The whole building looks even bigger from the backyard. As I was walking around, I reflected upon why the walls felt different from the inside. I believe it's because in here you feel trapped. When you're on the inside, the freedom is on the other side, close but far away. And on the outside, it's like you're looking in at an attraction, two different worlds separated by a wall. There was a patio I could see through the trees. The forest was so thick I had to go around and see if there was another way to go. And as you can see, this is how the ladder looks from the inside, and then I found another tub, which I believe didn't belong out in the garden. The patio seemed to be in decent shape actually. This and the whole garden must have been some kind of therapeutic way for the patients to get their small amount of freedom. I've read that there was apple trees and some patients grew potatoes. Now it was time for photography, and as I've told you before, I made a mistake, and that mistake was by not choosing to begin with taking photos. My initial plan was to take photos when it was daylight outside that could shine into the building. Now it was so dark that the corridors was way too dark to get natural light. And good light is very important for photography, especially when there are so many things to photograph, since it goes faster to take photos under good lighting conditions. I shot most of the photos when it was dark, but if it were brighter I would have probably gotten more and better ones. But you learn by your mistakes, and this is not the last time I go here. Next time I'm going to visit the cemetery too. Be sure to support me by liking, subscribing and turning on the bell notification so you don't miss out. Have a great life.